I always believed marriage was built on trust, on the idea that two people could weather storms together, no matter how violent they were. I thought love was unshakable, that loyalty was a promise written not just in words, but in actions, in sacrifices, in the everyday choices we made to protect each other. For years, I lived by that belief. For years, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. But then came that night, the night that flipped everything upside down. The night her smirk carved a scar into my soul. It was a Tuesday, completely ordinary. I'd gotten home late from work, exhausted but happy, carrying takeout from her favorite place because she had mentioned earlier she wasn't in the mood to cook. I remember walking into the living room, expecting her to be curled up on the couch watching some cheesy TV drama. Instead, I found her sitting upright, stiff, almost expectant. She didn't even look at the food in my hands. She just looked at me, and then she smiled. No, not a smile. A smirk. Cold, arrogant, the kind of expression that says, I have power over you, and you don't even know it yet. I sat down, confused, trying to brush it off. Rough day? I asked. But she didn't answer my question. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs, and with the calmest voice I'd ever heard, she said, You deserve to know the truth. All those trips, all those late nights, they weren't what you thought. My chest tightened instantly. My brain screamed at me to stop her, to change the subject, to beg her not to say the words I already feared. But she didn't stop. She leaned closer, that smirk widening, and whispered, I've been seeing someone else. For a long time, and honestly, I don't regret it. I swear, in that moment, the world stopped spinning. My ears rang so loudly I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. I wanted to laugh, to yell, to call her a liar, anything to make those words untrue. But the look in her eyes told me everything. This wasn't a confession of guilt. It was a performance. She wanted me to hurt. She wanted me to see her power. My hands trembled as I set the food down on the coffee table, my appetite gone. Why? I finally managed to whisper. Why would you do this to us? To me? And that's when she gave me the smile that will haunt me forever. Because I could, because you were too blind to see it, and because maybe I never wanted the life you dreamed of. That single sentence shattered everything I had ever believed about her, about us, about love itself. At that moment, I realized I wasn't looking at the woman I married anymore. I was staring into the eyes of a stranger who wore my wife's face but carried no trace of the person I had once loved. And that was only the beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smirk again. That cruel little curve of her lips that said, I win, you lose. The food I had brought home still sat untouched on the table, growing cold, while my entire world burned inside my chest. I lay in bed beside her, pretending to be asleep while she scrolled through her phone. The glow of the screen lit up her face, and all I could think about was who she was texting at that very moment. Him? The man she chose over me? The man she thought was worth destroying our marriage for? My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out everything else. I had two choices: confront her again, demand answers she clearly wasn't going to give, or start finding them myself. So I waited. I waited until her breathing slowed, until she drifted into the kind of deep sleep only someone guiltless or heartless could have. Then I got up, careful not to make a sound, and walked out to the living room. Her laptop was sitting on the coffee table. Normally, I would never have invaded her privacy like that. For years, I had trusted her with everything: my heart, my secrets, my dreams. But that night, trust was already dead. With shaking hands, I opened it. My stomach twisted as I typed in the password. And it worked. She hadn't even bothered to change it. Almost like she wanted me to find out. Almost like the betrayal wasn't complete until I saw the truth for myself. The moment the screen lit up, my world shattered. There they were. Emails, messages, pictures. A timeline of betrayal so meticulously hidden, yet so carelessly flaunted, it made me sick. She hadn't just been unfaithful. She had built an entire second life. Weekend trips I thought were girls' getaways. They were romantic escapes. Late nights at the office. They were dinners, drinks, hotel rooms, and the worst part, the part that still makes my chest tighten as I think about it, was a folder buried deep in her files. Inside were photos of her with him, laughing, kissing, holding hands like they were the ones married, like they were the ones building a life together. But that wasn't all. The final blow came when I found a document. Wedding plans. Her wedding plans.
My knees buckled, and I nearly dropped the laptop. She wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just living a double life. She was planning a future without me, a future where I was nothing but a footnote, a forgotten chapter in her story. And suddenly, everything made sense. The smirk, the coldness, the way she didn't even try to hide her betrayal. She had already decided. In her mind, she had already erased me. That night, staring at the glowing screen, I realized something terrifying. My marriage wasn't just broken, it had never really existed, because the person I loved, the person I thought I knew, never truly existed at all. And with that realization came something else. Not just pain, not just anger, but a burning need for answers. A need for confrontation, not just with her, but with myself. Who was I? If the last decade of my life had been a lie. The laptop was still open in front of me, its cold light casting long shadows across the living room. My hands were trembling, not just from shock, but from rage, pure white-hot rage that made my whole body feel like it was on fire. For years, I had built my life around her. I had worked overtime, saved money, sacrificed vacations, and even put my dreams on hold just so we could have a stable future together. And in return, she had been laying the foundation for a future without me. I couldn't breathe. The walls of our home, suddenly felt like a prison decorated with lies. Every picture frame on the wall, every gift we had exchanged, every holiday we had spent together, it all turned to ash in my memory. But then something inside me shifted. The pain didn't go away. It never does. But it was joined by a sharp, undeniable clarity. I deserved the truth. Not the watered-down, half-hearted excuses she had thrown at me earlier. Not the smirk, not the dismissive shrugs, not the cold silence. I deserved the real truth, straight from her lips. And if she couldn't give it to me, then I would drag it out of her. So I shut the laptop, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt, and I walked back to the bedroom. She was still asleep, peacefully tucked beneath the blanket, as if the life she was destroying was nothing more than a dream she could forget in the morning. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I had promised forever to, the woman I thought I would grow old with. And yet, looking at her now, all I could see was a stranger. My chest ached, my throat felt raw, but I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Wake up," I said, my voice low, almost trembling. She stirred, opened her eyes slowly, and blinked at me in confusion. "What's wrong?" she mumbled, as if nothing was wrong. As if my entire world hadn't just been set on fire. I couldn't help but laugh, a hollow, broken laugh. "What's wrong?" I repeated, louder this time. "Everything is wrong. Our marriage is wrong. You are wrong." Her eyes narrowed, and for a split second that smirk, the same one that had haunted me all night, returned to her lips. And that was it. That was the breaking point. All the hurt, all the anger, all the betrayal that had been boiling inside me erupted. I told her about the laptop, about the emails, about the photos, about the wedding plans. I threw every piece of evidence in her face, daring her to deny it. But she didn't. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just shrugged. And with that single gesture, she destroyed whatever fragile hope I had left. Because in that moment, I realized something brutal. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She didn't love me. And if she didn't care about losing me, then I had to decide, was I willing to lose myself? That night wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It became about survival, my sanity, my future. And I knew deep down that the next step would change my life forever. Her shrug was like gasoline on an already raging fire inside me. My fist clenched so hard that my nails dug into my palms. I wanted her to cry, to scream, to care. But she didn't. She just stared at me with those cold, unbothered eyes, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience interrupting her sleep. "Say something," I demanded, my voice breaking. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me you didn't plan a whole new life behind my back. Tell me you didn't throw away everything we built." But instead of remorse, her lips curved into that same mocking smirk that had been haunting me ever since I opened that laptop. "You always think you know everything," she said flatly, almost bored. "But you don't. You never did." The room spun. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped iron chains around my ribs. I staggered back, disbelief and fury colliding inside me. "How long?" I whispered, though the anger in my voice cracked through the silence like thunder. "How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been laughing at me behind my back?" She sighed, sitting up, brushing her hair back with the casualness of someone discussing grocery lists. "Does it matter?" she asked. That was the moment, the exact second I realized that I wasn't standing in front of my wife anymore. I was standing in front of the enemy, the destroyer of my life, the woman who had looked me in the eye every day and chosen to keep tearing me apart with her silence, with her secrets, with her lies. I lost it. I poured everything out, every sleepless night, every doubt, every sacrifice I had made for us. I told her about the years I worked late just to pay off her student loans, the promotions I turned down so we could live closer to her family, the nights I stayed awake holding her when she cried over nothing and everything. And what did I get in return? A second life, a secret fiancé, a future I was never meant to be part of. Tears blurred my vision, but not hers. She sat there, cold and composed, watching me crumble. "Why?" I finally screamed, the word ripping out of my throat like a blade. Why wasn't I enough? And for the first time that night, her smirk faded, but not because she felt guilty, because she was annoyed. "You were never supposed to be permanent," she said, each word deliberate, cruel, final. "You were just safe until I found what I really wanted." My knees nearly buckled. My ears rang. My heart shattered so violently it felt like I could hear it breaking. I had thought the worst pain in life was losing someone you love, but I was wrong. The worst pain is realizing that the person you love never really existed at all, not the way you thought they did. And standing there in that bedroom, I finally understood. Our marriage hadn't ended tonight. It had been over for a long time. Tonight was just the night I was forced to face it. The silence after her words was deafening. It wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. It was the kind that suffocated, the kind that pressed down on your chest until you could barely breathe. I stood there, staring at the woman I had once promised forever, to realizing that forever had already been broken, shattered into pieces I could never glue back together. There are moments in life where you know, without question, that nothing will ever be the same again. This was mine. I looked around the room, the walls that once held our laughter, the bed where we whispered about dreams, the dresser cluttered with framed photos of vacations, anniversaries, and stolen little moments of joy. All of it felt like a museum of lies. Every smile, every kiss, every "I love you," now tainted with the knowledge of what she had been hiding. I wanted to smash those photos, to tear down every reminder of the illusion I had lived in. But I didn't. Because I realized destroying the evidence wouldn't change the truth, the life I thought I had never really existed. So I walked to the closet, pulled out a bag, and began to pack. My hands trembled as I shoved clothes inside, not because I didn't know what to take, but because I couldn't believe I was really doing it. Leaving. Ending everything in a single night. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just watched, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, that expressionless mask still plastered across her face. The woman who once held me tighter than anyone else in the world now couldn't even be bothered to reach out as I slipped away. When I zipped the bag, the sound echoed through the room like a closing chapter. I slung it over my shoulder, walked past her, and paused at the doorway. I wanted to say something, one last line, something powerful enough to make her regret everything. But no words came. Nothing I could say would ever matter to someone who had already decided I was disposable. So instead, I simply said, "Goodbye." The word cracked in my throat, heavy with all the pain, all the love, all the betrayal, and then I stepped out, closing the door behind me. The night air hit me like a slap, cold, sharp, real. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could breathe. But with every step I took down that driveway, away from the house I had once called home, the weight of what I was leaving behind pressed harder on my shoulders. I wasn't just walking away from her, I was walking away from the life I thought I had, from the man I used to be. And though my heart was breaking, I knew deep down this wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of something else, something I had yet to discover. That night, I didn't just leave my wife. I left behind the illusion, and I walked, shattered but free, into the unknown. The first night alone was the hardest. The silence of that small, rented apartment wasn't peaceful. It was haunting. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, even the faint traffic outside. It all sounded louder than it should, like the universe was reminding me that I was truly alone now. For years, I had fallen asleep to the sound of her breathing beside me. Now, the emptiness beside me felt like a cruel joke. I tossed and turned, unable to rest, replaying every moment of betrayal in my head, each memory twisting like a knife. Morning didn't feel any better. Waking up without her, without the comfort of routine, was like stepping into a stranger's life. I stared at the ceiling, wondering who I even was without her, without the marriage, without the identity I had built around being her husband. But as the days turned into weeks, something shifted. Pain was still there. It didn't disappear overnight, but small moments of clarity began to creep in. The freedom to choose what I ate for breakfast, the quiet ownership of my own space, the realization that I didn't have to explain myself to anyone anymore. I started running, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to escape the storm in my head. Each morning, I forced myself onto the pavement, my lungs burning, my legs aching. With every mile, the anger poured out. The betrayal screamed through my body until all that was left was exhaustion and a strange kind of peace. I also began journaling, just a notebook and a pen, but it became my therapy. I wrote down everything, the lies she told, the way I felt, the memories that haunted me. Some nights, the ink blurred with tears, but each page was a step toward reclaiming myself. Friends reached out, some offering support, some too awkward to know what to say. And while I appreciated them, I realized healing was something I had to face largely on my own. This wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about finding a way back to myself. The hardest part wasn't the loneliness. It was the memories that came uninvited. The smell of her perfume when I passed someone in a store. A song that once played during our road trips suddenly blaring through the radio. Laughter from another couple on the street that reminded me of what I had lost. But every time those moments hit, I told myself one thing. It wasn't real. It wasn't love if it came with lies. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to believe it. I wasn't healed yet. Far from it. But I was surviving. And for now, that was enough. They say the hardest part of moving on isn't leaving. It's staying gone. And I learned that the hard way. Because even after everything, after the smirk, after the lies, after the truth shattered me, there were nights when my chest ached so badly I almost picked up the phone. I stared at her number, my thumb hovering over the screen, the weight of years pulling me back like gravity. It wasn't love anymore. I knew that. But it was history. And history has a way of whispering lies in your ear. Maybe she'll change. Maybe she regrets it. Maybe it wasn't as bad as you remember. I found myself driving past our old house sometimes. The curtains were still there. The porch light still flickered the way it always had, and I couldn't stop wondering if she was inside, laughing, moving on, living as if I had never existed. The thought made me sick. Then there were the dreams. God, the dreams were the worst. In them, we were still us, still happy, still tangled in the illusion that love was enough. I would wake up reaching for her, only to find nothing but an empty bed and the cold sting of reality. Friends told me to stay strong, to remember what she did. They reminded me that going back wasn't just dangerous, it was self-destruction. But the heart doesn't listen to reason when it's bleeding. One night, the temptation nearly broke me. I sat in my car outside the house, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The urge to knock on the door, to demand answers, to beg for closure, it was overwhelming. But then I saw it. Through the window, her silhouette, and she wasn't alone. That moment hit me like a train. It wasn't just a reminder of what she'd done. It was proof. Proof that I had no place there anymore, that she had already replaced me, that my role in her story was over. I drove away with tears blurring my vision, but for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. The temptation was still there, yes, but now I had a weapon against it. Reality. She wasn't mine anymore, and maybe She never really was. For weeks, I carried the weight of that night, the night I saw her silhouette with someone else. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was the final nail in a coffin I'd been too afraid to bury. And yet, strangely, it didn't crush me. It freed me. I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes but a different fire inside me. For the first time in months, I wasn't asking, why me? I was asking, what now? The breakthrough didn't come like a lightning strike. It was quieter, more subtle, like a dawn breaking after the longest night. I realized I had been mourning something that no longer existed. I wasn't just grieving her betrayal. I was grieving the man I had been, the man who believed, who trusted blindly, who thought love alone was enough. And maybe that man needed to die, so I could finally become someone stronger. I started small. I deleted her number, not just from my phone, but from every backup, every cloud, every hidden corner where temptation could find me. I packed the reminders of her, the photos, the notes, the little souvenirs of a life we once shared, and put them in a box I would never open again. But the real change wasn't in deleting her. It was in reclaiming myself. I went back to the gym, not to punish myself, but to rebuild. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, rediscovered passions I'd left to gather dust while I tried to keep her happy. I reconnected with old friends, the kind who reminded me who I was before love became a battlefield. There was still pain, yes. There were still nights when I lay awake, haunted by her smirk, by the lies, by the alternate life she had hidden from me. But now, the pain wasn't controlling me. It was fueling me. Every ache in my chest was a reminder of why I couldn't go back, why I had to move forward. The breakthrough wasn't about forgetting her. It was about remembering me. For the first time in a long time, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a broken man. I saw a survivor, someone who had been to the bottom, who had lost everything he thought he knew, and yet was still standing. And that realization, that was the beginning of something new. Rebuilding wasn't glamorous. It wasn't some dramatic movie montage where everything falls back into place in a matter of weeks. No, rebuilding was slow, messy, and painful. It was a series of small steps, each one feeling like it carried the weight of the world. But those steps, no matter how shaky, were mine. I started with routine, waking up at the same time each day, forcing myself to make breakfast instead of skipping meals. It might sound trivial, but when your world collapses, even cooking eggs feels like a victory. I held on to those little victories, stacking them one on top of another, like bricks in a wall I was building around my heart, not to keep people out, but to give myself a foundation again. The gym became my sanctuary. Each drop of sweat felt like a release of all the anger, the shame, the haunting images of betrayal. I wasn't training for revenge. I wasn't training for anyone's approval. I was training to reclaim control of a body and mind I had neglected for too long. Every lift, every sprint, every sore muscle whispered the same truth. You're still here. You're still fighting. But rebuilding wasn't just physical. It was emotional. I sought therapy, though admitting I needed help felt like swallowing glass. The first session, I sat there in silence, convinced no one could understand what it felt like to have your life shattered by someone you trusted most. But as the sessions went on, I realized something powerful. I wasn't alone. Pain like mine wasn't unique. It was human. And hearing that truth out loud chipped away at the chains I had wrapped around myself. Then came the rediscovery of passion. I dusted off my guitar, the one that had sat untouched in the corner for years, and I started playing again. Music became my language when words failed me. Late at night, when the silence threatened to drown me, I strummed chords until my fingers ached, pouring every unspoken emotion into sound. Rebuilding also meant reconnecting. I reached out to old friends I had pushed away during the marriage, friends who thought I'd vanished for good. Some didn't answer, but some did. And their laughter, their stories, their presence reminded me of a version of myself I had almost forgotten. It wasn't about filling the void she left. It was about remembering the parts of me she could never take away. There were setbacks, of course. Nights when the weight of loneliness crushed me, when I wondered if I'd ever trust again, if I'd ever feel whole again. But instead of collapsing under those nights, I wrote about them. I filled journal pages with rage, sorrow, hope, anything that spilled out of my soul. And slowly, those pages became proof that healing wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. Rebuilding my life didn't mean erasing the past. It meant accepting it, carrying it, and deciding that it would no longer define me. The scars would stay, yes, but scars aren't signs of weakness. They're signs that the wound healed, that the fight didn't break me. And in that messy, imperfect process, something unexpected happened. I started to dream again. Not dreams about her, not dreams about what could have been, but dreams about what could still be. Dreams about who I was becoming, about the life I was shaping with my own hands. The truth was simple. She had taken so much from me, but she hadn't taken everything. What she couldn't touch, what she would never touch, was my will to rebuild. And piece by piece, brick by brick, I was becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone unshakable. Healing isn't a straight road. It's a winding path with sharp turns, unexpected cliffs, and moments when you feel like you're walking backward. And for me, that moment came one evening when her name lit up my phone screen. It had been months since the divorce was finalized, months since I swore I'd never hear her voice again. But there it was, a message, short, simple, just 4 words. Can we talk? I froze, my chest tightened, and for a second I was pulled back into every memory. Our wedding day, her laughter in the mornings, the way she used to rest her head on my shoulder as if I was her safe place. But just as quickly, the darker memories followed, the smirk, the betrayal, the lies that bled our marriage dry. Part of me wanted to delete the message, to erase her from my life completely. Another part, the weaker, desperate part, wanted to hear her out, to ask why, to demand answers to questions that had kept me awake for months. I paced the room, phone in my hand, my mind waging war against my heart. Logic screamed, "Don't open that door again." But loneliness whispered, "What if she regrets it? What if she's changed?" Finally, against my better judgment, I replied, not with forgiveness, not with anger, just 3 words. "What about now?" We met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. I walked in first, my heart pounding, my palms sweaty, and then I saw her. She looked the same, yet different, the same eyes, the same smile, but there was something colder now, something calculating. And when she looked up at me, it wasn't guilt I saw, it was curiosity. We sat in silence for a long moment, and then she spoke, not with an apology, not with remorse, but with excuses. She said she had been confused, that she never meant to hurt me, that I had pushed her away. Every word felt like poison, rewriting the truth, twisting the knife deeper. And then, just when I thought I couldn't feel more disgust, she asked the question that shattered whatever fragile hope I had left. "Do you think we could try again?" I laughed, not out of joy, not even out of relief, out of disbelief. The woman who had torn my soul apart, who had lied, cheated, and smiled while doing it, thought I would crawl back into her arms. In that moment, I realized something vital. Looking back was a trap, a black hole designed to suck me in, to erase every ounce of progress I had fought so hard to build. I stood up, looked her in the eye, and said the only words that mattered. "You destroyed me once. Never again." And with that, I walked away, not just from her, but from the ghost of who I used to be. Walking out of that cafe, I didn't look back. For the first time in months, maybe even years, my steps felt lighter, like the weight I'd been dragging behind me had finally snapped off. The cold night air hit my face, and instead of stinging, it felt refreshing, almost like a baptism. It was strange. I had thought the final goodbye would be devastating, that it would leave me hollow and gasping for something to hold on to, but instead, I felt clarity. Pure, unshakable clarity. She no longer had power over me. Her words, her smirk, her betrayal, they belonged to the past now, locked away in a story that no longer defined me. As I drove home, I replayed the evening in my head. The way she twisted the truth, the way she tried to put the blame on me, the way she asked if we could start over like nothing had happened. And for the first time, instead of feeling anger or sadness, I felt pity. She hadn't changed. She probably never would. And that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there in the dark for a while, just breathing, just being. I thought about the younger version of myself, the man who had once believed love was forever, who thought trust was unbreakable, who believed that marriage was sacred. That man was gone, yes, but in his place stood someone stronger, someone who had faced the fire, been burned to ashes, and was now rising again. I walked inside, turned off my phone, and poured myself a glass of water. I didn't need wine, I didn't need distractions, I didn't need her. All I needed was peace, and for the first time in a long time, I had it. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered something to myself. Not a prayer, not a wish, just a statement of truth. The past is over, and I am free. And with that, I closed my eyes. Not haunted, not broken, but ready for the sunrise of a new life. The days that followed felt strange, almost like learning how to walk again after forgetting the steps. For so long, my identity had been tied to her, our routines, our shared plans, the future we thought we were building. But now, all of that was gone. At first, the silence was deafening. Waking up without her beside me, making coffee for just one cup, walking into an empty house, it all felt alien. But little by little, I began to see that emptiness not as a void, but as space. Space for new things, space for me. I started with the basics. Cleaning out the house, throwing away old pictures, boxing up reminders of what we used to be. It was painful, yes, but it was also liberating. With every drawer I emptied, with every photo I tucked away, I felt lighter. I reconnected with people I had drifted away from during my marriage. Old friends, family members, even co-workers who had quietly offered support when everything came crashing down. Some conversations were awkward at first, but others, they felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater too long. Then I turned inward. I picked up books I had always wanted to read but never had time for. I went back to the gym not to punish myself, but to rebuild my strength, to feel alive in my own body again. I even started writing, just little notes, journal entries, stories that poured out late at night when I couldn't sleep. And through those words, I began to understand myself in ways I never had before. Of course, there were still nights of doubt, nights where I questioned everything, nights where the memory of her smirk, of her betrayal came flooding back, threatening to drag me down. But those moments no longer defined me. They were reminders of what I had survived, not chains that held me prisoner. And slowly, very slowly, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. It's strange how life introduces people at the most unexpected times. For months, I told myself I wasn't ready, that I couldn't even think about letting someone new into my world. I was still raw, still carrying the weight of betrayal. But then, without warning, someone walked into my life, not as a replacement, not as a cure, but as a reminder that not everyone comes with hidden daggers behind their smiles. It started small. A casual conversation at the coffee shop I had begun frequenting, the kind of place where nobody knew me as the man whose wife shattered his life. She was sitting a few tables away, reading a book I had loved years ago, and I couldn't help but comment on it. I thought it would be a passing exchange, a polite smile, maybe a quick laugh, but instead, we ended up talking for almost an hour. About books, about movies, about the simple things that make life feel less heavy. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just a conversation between strangers. But when I left the cafe that day, I realized something shocking. I was smiling. Not the forced, bitter smile I had worn for months, but a real one, the kind I thought I had lost forever. Days turned into weeks, and those accidental meetings became intentional. We'd grab coffee, go for walks, share stories about our lives. She never pried into my past, never pushed me to reveal more than I wanted to. She simply listened, and in her presence, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. But with that safety came fear. Every time I laughed with her, every time I felt my guard lowering, I'd hear the voice in my head whispering, "Don't do this again. Don't trust. Don't get hurt." The scars of betrayal weren't just on my heart, they were etched into my instincts. One night, I confessed this to her. I told her about the betrayal, about the smirk that still haunted me, about how part of me was terrified that everyone eventually takes off their mask to reveal something darker underneath. She didn't try to fix me, didn't offer empty promises. She just placed her hand on mine and said, "You don't have to rush. Healing doesn't have a deadline." And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Maybe this wasn't about starting a new love story. Maybe it was about learning to trust myself again, to believe that I could build connections without losing who I was. Every time I felt a spark of happiness with her, guilt clawed its way back into my chest. It was as if part of me believed I didn't deserve to move on, that finding comfort in someone new meant I was betraying the pain I had carried, betraying the version of me who had been broken by that smirk. At night, I'd lie awake replaying everything, her laughter echoing in my ears, and then the cruel words of my wife crashing in right after. It felt like I was caught between two worlds, one foot shackled to the ruins of my marriage, the other hesitantly stepping toward something new. But I couldn't move fully in either direction. The hardest part wasn't the memories themselves. It was the voice inside me whispering, "What if it happens again? What if you're just setting yourself up for another fall?" That fear was paralyzing. It made me second-guess every smile, every moment of ease, every flicker of warmth. One evening, after weeks of battling with my own thoughts, I found myself standing in front of the mirror. I didn't see the man I once was, the one who trusted blindly, who loved without hesitation. I saw someone scarred, someone hesitant, someone terrified of being destroyed again. And yet, beneath all that fear, there was a quiet strength, a voice that whispered back, "You've survived the worst. You can survive the unknown too." Letting go isn't a switch you can flip. It's a process. And for the first time, I allowed myself to admit that maybe, just maybe, I was holding on to the pain because it was familiar, because stepping into the unknown felt scarier than clinging to the hurt I already understood. That night, I didn't make a decision. I didn't promise myself I'd move on or that I'd fall in love again. But I did make a quiet vow to stop running from the possibility of healing, to give myself permission to see where this connection might lead, even if it terrified me. Because maybe letting go isn't about forgetting the past. Maybe it's about loosening your grip just enough to reach for something new. Just when I thought I was beginning to find my balance, life had a way of testing me. It started with a simple notification, a friend request on social media. The name froze me in place. It wasn't her, but it was someone connected to her. Someone who had been part of our circle back when my marriage still looked picture perfect from the outside. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. My chest tightened. My palms grew sweaty. I didn't accept, but I didn't decline either. It was like a door I had slammed shut months ago was being knocked on again, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to even touch the handle. Then, as if the universe wasn't done tormenting me, a week later I actually saw her. Not up close, not in a conversation, but across a grocery store aisle. She was there, smiling, laughing, holding a basket as if nothing had ever happened, like she hadn't set fire to everything I believed in. And that smirk, it was still there. My knees almost buckled. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, to escape, to not let her see me. But at the same time, anger surged through me. How dare she carry on like nothing had happened? How dare she look so at ease while I had been clawing my way out of the wreckage she left behind? I left the store without saying a word, but my mind didn't leave her. That night, the nightmares returned, the sleepless tossing, the endless what-ifs, the memories clawing their way back into my head. It was as if seeing her had ripped open a wound I had been trying so hard to let heal. But something was different this time. Yes, I was shaken. Yes, I felt the sting of betrayal all over again. But I also realized something important. She no longer had the same power over me. The pain was there, but it didn't own me the way it once did. And that realization, small as it was, felt like progress, because maybe the true test of healing isn't whether the past disappears. Maybe it's whether you can face it without letting it consume you. That night after seeing her at the store, I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head, the way she smiled, carefree, untouched by the chaos she had left in her wake. My mind waged war against itself. Half of me wanted to confront her, to finally unleash all the words I had swallowed, the anger I had buried, the questions that still haunted me. But the other half whispered, what would it change? For days, I wrestled with the idea. I'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror, rehearsing what I'd say if I ever saw her again. Why did you do it? Did you ever really love me? Do you even care about the damage you caused? Each line cut deeper, each imaginary confrontation leaving me more exhausted than the last. But then, there was the other scenario, the one where I said nothing, where I simply turned and walked away if our paths ever crossed again. Not because I was weak, but because I was finally strong enough to not let her words or her presence dictate my peace. I remember sitting at my kitchen table one evening, staring at a cup of coffee gone cold, Realizing the truth, confrontation wouldn't give me closure. Closure had to come from within. She could deny, she could lie, she could smirk that same cruel smirk, but nothing she said would undo what had already been done. So, I made a decision. If fate put us in the same place again, I wouldn't chase confrontation. I wouldn't demand answers. I wouldn't let her bait me back into the storm. Instead, I'd choose silence. Not out of fear, but out of defiance. Because sometimes, walking away is louder than any words you could ever say. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight in my chest loosen just a little because I realized the power wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. Just when I thought I had finally found a rhythm in my new life. Work, quiet evenings, trying to rebuild pieces of myself. I came home one evening to find an envelope slipped under my door. No return address, no markings. Just my name, written in handwriting I recognized instantly. Heron. My stomach dropped. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at it, afraid to touch it. It felt like a trap, like a ghost reaching out from the past to remind me that the story wasn't over. My hand shook as I picked it up, the paper light but heavy with memories I didn't want back. I set it on the counter and walked away. I paced the room, trying to convince myself to throw it out, to burn it, to pretend it had never been delivered. But curiosity, no, desperation, gnawed at me. What could she possibly have to say now? Was it another excuse? Another manipulation? Or was it something else? When I finally tore it open, the smell of her perfume hit me, faint but unmistakable. My chest tightened. The letter wasn't long, but every word was like a blade. She wrote about regrets, about mistakes she couldn't explain. She said she missed me, that she thought of me every single day. And then came the line that froze me to my core. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you. I dropped the letter on the table, my pulse racing. Love. How could someone who loved me destroy me so completely? Was this a plea for redemption, or just another way to pull me back into her web? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark with the letter on the table, staring at it, wondering if this was her final game, or if deep down a part of me still wanted to believe her. The letter became a poison in my home. It sat on the table like a living thing, pulling my eyes back to it every time I passed. I hated it. I hated her words. But at the same time, I couldn't throw it away. Something in me still needed to hold on to it, as if destroying it would mean destroying the last piece of the life I once thought was real. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter, that it was just another manipulation, another string she wanted to tug. But late at night, when the silence wrapped around me, and the walls seemed to close in, her words echoed in my mind. I never stopped loving you. What did that even mean? Was it possible to love someone and still betray them so deeply? Was love supposed to hurt like this? My mind was at war with itself, logic screaming that she was toxic, that she had ruined me, while my heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, the person I fell in love with was still in there somewhere. I started to dream about her again. Not the woman she became, but the woman I used to know. The nights we laughed until we couldn't breathe. The way she used to squeeze my hand when we crossed the street. The look in her eyes when she told me I was her forever. My subconscious betrayed me, keeping her alive inside me when I wanted her gone. During the day, I walked around with a mask. At work, I smiled. With friends, I laughed. But inside, I was split down the middle. Half of me wanted to burn the letter, erase her from my memory forever. The other half wanted to believe that maybe there was something salvageable in the ruins of what we once had. And that's the cruelest part about betrayal. It doesn't just end with the act. It lingers. It claws at you long after, making you question not only the person who hurt you, but yourself. That letter wasn't closure. It was gasoline on a fire I thought I'd put out. Every time I looked at that letter, I swore I wouldn't reply. I promised myself I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she still had space in my mind. But temptation has a way of creeping in quietly, like smoke slipping through the cracks of a door. I would find myself drafting messages in my phone late at night, not to send, just to get the words out. I wrote things like, "You don't get to say you love me after what you did," or Do you even realize what you destroyed? Sometimes I typed apologies I never meant, as if part of me wanted to pretend we could roll the clock back, start over, erase the smirk that ended everything. But I never pressed send. I'd delete the words before dawn, ashamed that I even considered giving her another piece of me. And yet, the cycle continued, night after night. Thought after thought, a battle between anger and longing, between my pride and the aching void she left behind. There were nights I sat with the phone in my hand, staring at her contact name, my thumb hovering over the call button, my chest tight, my heart racing, the ghost of her voice almost pulling me back. And then, just before giving in, I'd hear the echo of her smirk in my head, that cruel look that told me I had been nothing more than a fool. That was what stopped me. But the truth, I wasn't strong. Not yet. I was fighting with myself more than I was fighting with her. That's the part of betrayal no one talks about. It doesn't end with the act. It worms into your veins, makes you question your worth, your strength, and even your own resolve. The temptation to respond wasn't about her. It was about me, about whether I was willing to stand firm in the decision to cut her out, or if I still secretly hoped she'd find a way back in. And the scariest part, I didn't know the answer. Silence was supposed to be my shield. I thought that if I ignored her long enough, if I refused to give her a response, she would eventually fade away, like smoke in the wind. But silence has a way of turning heavy, like carrying a weight that grows every single day. At first, it felt like control. I didn't reply, I didn't call, I didn't give her anything. But with every passing week, the silence began to feel less like strength and more like suffocation. My chest felt tight, my nights restless, the words I never spoke clawing at the back of my throat. Friends noticed. They asked why I looked distracted, why my temper seemed short, why my smile had started to disappear. I brushed it off, pretending I was just tired, overworked, but the truth was uglier. I was crumbling under the pressure of everything unsaid. Then one night, I cracked. I couldn't take the silence anymore. I needed to release it, to let my voice cut through the suffocating stillness. So I called her. I don't even remember pressing the button. It felt like my body moved on its own, like the silence itself had broken me and forced my hand. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Then she answered. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Like she had been expecting me all along. I knew you'd call eventually, she said, with a tone that carried both victory and venom. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Silence hadn't broken her. It had broken me. That night wasn't just a slip. It was the unraveling of everything I thought I had under control. The first thing she said wasn't an apology. It wasn't regret. It wasn't even anger. It was a laugh, a small, sharp laugh that made my stomach twist. You really thought you could just ignore me? She said, her voice dripping with condescension. You don't get it, do you? I've always been in control. You just didn't see it. Every word felt like acid. She spoke slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the effect it had on me. She talked about the secrets she kept, the lies she told, the games she played, all with that same smug satisfaction. I clenched the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the wall, to shut her out again, but I couldn't. Her words had me trapped, like venom spreading through my veins. She reminded me of moments I had doubted myself, twisted them, and turned them into weapons. Remember that night you thought you were overthinking? That wasn't your imagination, that was me, testing how far I could push before you'd break. The realization hit me like a blade. She hadn't just stumbled into betrayal, she had crafted it, carefully, intentionally. For her, this wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. My throat went dry. My body trembled. For the first time, I understood the depth of the darkness I was dealing with. This wasn't just a broken marriage. This was a war, and she had been fighting it long before I even knew a battle had begun. And worst of all, she was winning. Her voice slithered through the phone, calm and steady, as if she'd rehearsed this moment. You really think walking away is going to save you? She said. I've already planned for this. Every step you take, I've set the ground beneath your feet. I froze. The way she said it wasn't just arrogance. It was confidence. Cold, calculated confidence. She wasn't bluffing. She started listing things off. How she had spoken to mutual friends, twisting the story before I ever had a chance to share mine. How she had documents, screenshots, and half-truths lined up to paint herself as the victim. How she knew exactly which strings to pull to make me look like the monster. Every word was like a door slamming shut in my face. The life I thought I knew wasn't just unraveling. It had been dismantled piece by the person I trusted most. "You'll see," she whispered, her tone chillingly casual. "By the time I'm finished, no one will believe you. They'll all believe me. Because I've been preparing for this long before you even realized." I sat there in stunned silence, my heart pounding, my mind racing. This wasn't about a betrayal anymore. This was about annihilation. And in that moment, I realized she hadn't just betrayed me. She had built a trap, and I had already stepped into it. It didn't take long before I saw the first cracks forming in my reality. Friends stopped replying to my texts. Family members began giving me the cold shoulder. And coworkers I'd always trusted suddenly seemed distant. I knew why. She had gotten to them first. The version of the story they were hearing wasn't mine. It was hers. A carefully crafted tale where she was the wounded, innocent wife, and I was the cruel, unfaithful husband who had abandoned her for no reason. She painted herself as the victim of my supposed lies, my double life, and my neglect. And the worst part? They believed her. I'd walk into a room, and I could feel the judgment in their stares. People who once smiled at me now avoided my eyes. Conversation stopped when I entered. It was like being erased from my own life, rewritten as a villain in someone else's script. I tried defending myself, tried explaining the truth, but the more I spoke, the more it sounded like desperation. And desperation doesn't win sympathy. It wins suspicion. She knew that. She counted on that. While I was scrambling to clear my name, she was calmly weaving her web tighter, making sure every thread wrapped around me until I could barely breathe. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was exile. I wasn't just losing my wife. I was losing my world. One night, after weeks of sleepless nights and endless paranoia, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, something concrete, something undeniable. My gut kept screaming that the truth was out there, just hidden in the shadows she created. So, I did what I swore I wouldn't do. I opened her laptop. It wasn't easy. She had become paranoid too, locking her screen, changing passwords. But she slipped once, just once, and I memorized the keystrokes. That night, when she was asleep, I sat in the living room with her laptop glowing in the dark, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. At first it was nothing, emails, bills, boring messages with friends. But then I found a folder, hidden, buried, labeled with a single word, plans. I clicked, and my world shattered. There were messages, hundreds of them, conversations that spanned months, maybe longer, not just flirty texts or stolen moments. These were detailed, intimate discussions about a life without me, about where they would live, about how soon she'd leave me, about money, children, even vacations they'd take. And then the final blow, a picture, a ring, on her finger, not our wedding ring. She wasn't just cheating, she was engaged. She had a second life. In one night, everything I thought I knew about my marriage collapsed. My trust, my love, my future, all of it turned into nothing but lies scattered across a glowing screen. And the worst part, the smirk on her face the last time we fought, it made sense now. She wasn't worried about losing me. She had already replaced me. That night, I realized I hadn't just lost my wife. I had lost the illusion of the life we built together. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I sat on the edge of the couch staring at the glowing screen like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. My hands were still trembling, my chest tight with a panic I couldn't control. Every message, every plan, every smile she had ever faked, it all collided in my mind like a bomb going off. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it wasn't real. Maybe I had misread things. But the picture of that ring, the dates, the detailed conversations, they were all too deliberate, too cold, too real. I felt my stomach drop, my heart pound like it was trying to escape my chest. I could barely breathe. And then it hit me. Anger. Not the quiet, simmering anger I thought I could handle. No, this was raw, uncontrollable rage. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to tear everything down that reminded me of her. I could feel it building in my throat, a roaring storm that wouldn't be contained. I punched the wall next to me, the plaster cracking under my fist, and still it wasn't enough. Tears came after. Not soft, quiet tears, but the kind that burned your eyes, left your cheeks raw, and made your body shake uncontrollably. I curled up on the floor, rocking back and forth like I was trying to shrink into myself, trying to disappear. Every memory of us, every laugh, every "I love you" she had ever said, it turned into ash in my hands. Somewhere in the darkness, I started whispering to myself. Questions, accusations, desperate pleas for answers that I already knew I'd never get. Why? How could she? Was I not enough? Did she ever love me at all? The words echoed in the empty living room, bouncing off the walls, mocking me. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I couldn't tell. I was trapped in a fog of grief, anger, and disbelief. My body ached from holding in sobs and shaking with adrenaline. Every time I thought I might stop, my mind flashed back to her smirk, the one that had haunted me for weeks. That smug, triumphant smirk, the one I had dismissed as arrogance. It was the face of betrayal, the face of the woman I had loved with everything I had. I felt hollow, broken. My marriage wasn't just over. It had been a lie, a house of cards that collapsed the moment I peeked behind the curtain. And yet, even in that complete devastation, a tiny stubborn part of me wanted to confront her, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused. But the rational part of me, the part that wasn't screaming and shaking, knew I couldn't. Not yet. Not while I was this raw, this exposed. I had to survive this night. I had to let the storm pass so I could think. I had to figure out what came next. By dawn, I was exhausted, emotionally spent. My hands were scraped from hitting the wall, my shirt damp with sweat and tears. I sat on the floor, staring at her laptop one last time before shutting it down. The glowing screen went black, but the images, the words, the smirk, they would haunt me forever. That morning, the house was quiet, almost peaceful, but I knew nothing would ever feel the same. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was unmoored. I didn't know who I was anymore, what my life was for, or how I could trust anyone again. All I knew was that the woman I loved had built a secret life, and I had just discovered it in the most brutal way imaginable. And somewhere deep down, beneath the anger, beneath the grief, beneath the disbelief, a new feeling began to creep in. Fear. Fear of what came next. Fear that my life, as I had known it, was gone forever. I didn't sleep that morning. I couldn't. The house felt heavier, the air thicker, as if it too knew what had happened the night before. I sat at the kitchen table, her coffee untouched, staring at the spot where she usually poured her sugar just the way she liked it. My hands still trembled, but I forced myself to stand, to face her. She was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, humming softly, like nothing had changed. My chest tightened. I swallowed hard and finally spoke, my voice rougher than I expected. "Who is he?" She looked up, her expression calm, almost too calm. The smirk I had hated so much returned, but this time I noticed the subtle shift. There was a flicker of surprise, maybe even fear. "What are you talking about?" she asked, pretending innocence. I slammed the laptop down on the table. "Don't play dumb. I know everything. The messages, the plans, the ring. Who is he?" Her eyes flickered to the laptop, then back to me. She didn't deny it. She didn't even blink. Instead, she leaned back on the couch, crossed her legs, and said softly, "You finally found out." I felt my stomach twist. "Found out? That's what you call this. Found out. Do you have any idea what this does to me? What it does to us?" She tilted her head, her gaze cold but steady. "I've thought about this for a long time. You were comfortable, predictable. I needed more." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "More? More than a life we built together? More than years of trust and love? You call this more?" She didn't answer. She just stared at me, calm, collected, and that smirk, that goddamn smirk, was back. "You don't understand," she said finally. "It wasn't just about him. It's about me, about needing something I couldn't get here. I didn't lie to hurt you. Not initially. But it happened." I felt rage and sorrow collide in my chest. My hands shook, my vision blurred with tears. I refused to cry openly. "Happened. You planned this. Months of planning, secret meetings, conversations about leaving me. You didn't stumble into this. You built it behind my back." Her face softened, a calculated softness, like she was rehearsed in the art of justification. I know it looks bad, but I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would be easier if—" I couldn't let her finish. I couldn't. Easier for who? Easier for you. Do you even know what you've done to me? Do you know what it feels like to realize everything you believed in was a lie?" She flinched just a little at that, and I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it didn't last. It never lasts with someone like her. She recovered instantly, eyes steady, voice low. "I did what I had to do," she said. "I'm sorry if you feel hurt, but this is my choice." The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock and my own ragged breathing. I felt the weight of her words pressing down on me, a wall I couldn't climb over, and in that silence, I realized the truth. I wasn't just confronting her. I was confronting the end of everything I thought I knew. The life we had, the trust, the love, the future, it was all gone. I wanted to scream, to hit, to tear something apart. But instead, I sat down heavily in the chair across from her, my hands gripping the table so tight my knuckles turned white. I don't know what to do now," I whispered, voice breaking. "I don't know if I can stay. I don't know if I can forgive. I don't know if I even want to." She didn't answer immediately, just watched me. That smirk softened into something unreadable, something terrifyingly calm. Then, "Maybe you need to figure that out," she said. And just like that, the confrontation ended. Not with a resolution, but with a chilling emptiness that filled the room. I was left alone with my thoughts, my grief, and the undeniable truth. The woman I loved had built a life without me, and I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if I would jump or fall. The days after our confrontation were worse than the night I found the laptop. She moved around the house as if nothing had happened, keeping her distance, but never leaving entirely. I watched her, tried to measure her expressions, her tone, her gestures, searching for cracks, but she was a master of composure. I confronted her again, needing clarity, needing a confession I could believe. "I need to know everything," I said, my voice low, tight with anger. "Not just snippets. Tell me why. How long? Everything." She sighed, a sound so casual it made my blood boil. "Why does it matter so much to you? You already know." "No, I don't," I snapped. "You're holding back. You planned this. You lied for months, maybe years. You made decisions about a life without me. I deserve the truth." Her eyes softened, but there was still that hint of smirk, that subtle edge of superiority that had haunted me from the beginning. "You want the truth?" she asked. "The truth is, I didn't lie to hurt you. I lied to survive, to be honest with myself. You'll never understand because you never questioned what you had. You just accepted it. You were happy enough, and I wasn't." I felt a surge of disbelief, nausea, and rage all at once. "You weren't happy? You weren't happy. And that gave you the right to betray everything we built together. Our marriage, our family, our life?" She flinched slightly but recovered almost immediately. "I didn't think I could leave without breaking you completely, so I stayed until I could create a way out." I could barely breathe. My chest felt tight, my vision blurred. "A way out? You mean with him? With someone else? You planned your escape while pretending to love me?" Her lips trembled for a fraction of a second. That tiny flicker of human emotion made my chest ache, made me question for a second if she even cared about the damage she caused. But it passed. She pulled herself together like a machine, precise, cold. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I also couldn't lie to myself any longer. I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth." I recoiled, as if her words had physically struck me. Every memory, every promise, every "I love you" we had shared seemed to dissolve in that moment. And yet, part of me still searched for an excuse, a shred of justification, because the truth was unbearable. "You make it sound so normal," I whispered. "Like this was inevitable. Like it's okay to destroy someone's world because you needed to feel alive." Her eyes, for the first time, looked weary, almost sad, but not remorseful. "It wasn't easy," she said. "It never is, but life doesn't wait for you to be ready. Choices have to be made. Mine was just faster than yours." I wanted to scream, to beg, to cry, to strike her, but all the energy had left me. I slumped into a chair, my mind spinning with disbelief and betrayal. The woman I had trusted with my entire life had constructed an entire second reality without me, and now she wanted me to understand it, to rationalize it, as if her cold logic could erase the pain she had caused. The denial didn't come from her, it came from me. I couldn't process it. My mind refused to accept that someone I had loved so completely could act with such calculated detachment. Every instinct in me screamed that this couldn't be real, but deep down, I knew it was. And in that quiet, suffocating room, I realized I wasn't just grieving a marriage. I was grappling with a truth so heavy, so unbearable, that accepting it would change everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and myself. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even focus on the simplest things without my mind wandering back to her words, her smirk, the hidden life she had built. Days blurred into nights, and I found myself replaying every memory we had shared, scrutinizing every laugh, every touch, every I love you for cracks I had missed. That's when I started noticing patterns, small inconsistencies I had ignored before. The late nights she claimed were work. The trips she said were for her friends. The phone calls she hushed when I entered the room. I had dismissed them as normal, as ordinary life. But now, in the cold light of betrayal, they were all pieces of a puzzle I had never wanted to see. I dug deeper, combing through old emails, text messages, and receipts. Every interaction, every unexplained absence suddenly had context. It wasn't random, it was intentional. And with each revelation, a deeper, more frightening understanding began to form. This wasn't just about her wanting someone else. This was about control, about planning a life where she could exist without me, unbound by any obligations, by any loyalty. And yet, beneath the calculated moves, I started to sense something else, something I hadn't considered in my grief: fear. She had been afraid too. Afraid of being trapped in a life she didn't want, afraid of confronting her own unhappiness, afraid of the consequences of leaving. Every plan she made, every secret she kept was also a way to protect herself. From me, from herself, from a life she could no longer bear. The realization didn't make it hurt less. If anything, it made it worse. Betrayal by itself is terrible, but betrayal mixed with fear, with desperation, it's a poison that sinks deeper into your bones. She wasn't just cheating because she wanted excitement. She was building a way to escape a life she had convinced herself she couldn't leave openly. And then the memories hit me. The quiet nights when she seemed distant, the times I tried to reach her and she brushed me off. The subtle frustration that I had interpreted as stress or fatigue. They were all signs, all warnings. I had been blinded by my love and my assumptions. I realized painfully that the woman I had loved so completely was not the person I thought I knew. She was layered, complex, human, but also deeply selfish, deeply flawed, and capable of a detachment I had never imagined. And yet, beneath the anger and grief, I felt a strange, almost guilty curiosity. I wanted to understand her choices, her fears, her hidden world, not to forgive, not to reconcile, but to comprehend. Because understanding, I thought, is the only way to survive such a devastating collapse. I sat there for hours, tracing every moment, every word, every glance back to their hidden meaning. And the more I saw, the more I realized that our marriage had been a series of compromises, half-truths, and silent resentments. I had thought I was blind to her, but in truth, I had been blind to myself, blind to the cracks that had been forming long before the smirk, long before the hidden folder, long before the ring. By the time the sun rose, I felt exhausted, hollow, but also clearer. I wasn't healed. I wasn't even close. But I was beginning to see the truth in its full, terrifying shape. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had revealed the fragile, imperfect nature of love itself. And now I had a choice. Let it destroy me completely, or find a way to rebuild myself from the wreckage. Days passed, and I moved through them like a ghost. I was home, but not really there. I went through the motions, making coffee, answering emails, pretending to live. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely, trapped in a loop of betrayal, reflection, and heartbreak. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't stay in limbo forever. I couldn't continue to live under the shadow of her hidden life. The choice was mine alone. Stay and try to salvage some twisted version of our marriage, or leave and reclaim the fragments of myself that she had shattered. I watched her one morning from the doorway of the bedroom. She moved with ease, effortless, as if the past weeks had never happened. The same calm demeanor, the same subtle smirk that had haunted my nights. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't going to change. She would never admit to her wrongs the way I needed her to. She would never repair the trust she had destroyed. The decision crystallized. It had to be about me now, not her happiness, not her fears, not her needs. Me, my life, my dignity. I spent hours imagining the conversation, rehearsing it in my mind. I pictured walking out, walking away from everything that had once felt like a safe harbor. I imagined facing the world alone, rebuilding my life piece by piece. And then I imagined staying, clinging to a lie, pretending that her smirk wasn't a dagger, pretending that her secret life didn't exist. The choice when it came was both terrifying and liberating. I called her into the living room. She looked at me expectantly, curious, maybe even amused. "I've made my decision," I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "I can't stay here. I can't live in a marriage built on lies. I won't be a part of your second life." Her face didn't change. She didn't cry, didn't beg. Just that familiar, unreadable calm. "You're leaving?" she asked, simple, almost detached. "Yes," I replied, "and don't try to stop me. I need to find myself again, outside of this house, outside of us. I can't do it with you here." For the first time, the smirk faltered, not gone entirely. She wasn't that easy to unmask, but a shadow of something like surprise flickered across her features. "Then, go," she said softly, "if that's what you need." I packed the essentials, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Clothes, documents, a few sentimental items I couldn't bear to leave behind entirely. Every item I touched felt heavy with memories, some painful, some bittersweet. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I couldn't. Not yet. I stepped into the sunlight, the world stretching before me like a blank canvas. The air felt different, freer somehow, but tinged with grief. I knew the road ahead would be hard, lonely, and uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control over my own life. I wasn't healed, I wasn't whole, but I had made a choice. And sometimes I realized the bravest thing you can do after betrayal is to choose yourself. The door clicked shut behind me, and with it, a chapter ended. What lay ahead was unknown, but it was mine. And for now, that was enough. The first few days alone were the hardest. The silence of the apartment without her presence was deafening. Every corner, every chair, every photo felt like a reminder of what I had lost. And yet, paradoxically, it also felt like the first breath of freedom I'd had in months. I wandered through the city, letting the sunlight hit my face, letting the world move around me while I tried to move through my own grief. Each step was heavy at first, weighted by memories and betrayal, but with every block, with every inhale of fresh air, I felt myself reclaiming a piece of who I had been before. Friends reached out, some cautiously, unsure if they should pry, others blunt, offering solace or anger in equal measure. I accepted help when I could, but mostly I walked alone, trying to digest the truth of everything. The lies, the smirk, the hidden life she had built without me. I started writing again. Notes, thoughts, memories. I poured everything onto paper, as if by naming it, I could make sense of it. Slowly, the anger that had consumed me began to turn into clarity. Pain was still there, sharp and real, but it became something I could hold. Something I could observe rather than be crushed by. I realized that my life wouldn't return to what it had been, and that was okay. Maybe it was more than okay. Maybe it was necessary. I had loved fully, blindly, and in doing so, I had been broken. But in that breaking, I had also awakened. Months passed. I rebuilt routines, rediscovered passions, reconnected with old friends, and even allowed myself to feel joy again. The wounds remained, of course. Some nights I still saw that smirk in my mind, haunting and triumphant. But each morning I woke knowing that I was alive, that I had survived, that I was reclaiming my story. And one day, standing at a small coffee shop watching people pass by, I understood something profound. Betrayal doesn't just destroy, it transforms. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've ignored, the truths you've hidden from your own eyes. And in that confrontation, painful as it is, you find strength you never knew you had. I wouldn't call myself healed, not entirely, but I was free. Free from lies, free from the shadows of someone else's choices, free to rebuild a life that was truly mine. And in that freedom, there was hope. Because even after the deepest betrayal, even after the darkest smirk, life goes on. And so would I. Months have passed since that night. The night everything I believed in crumbled. The night I discovered the hidden life she built behind my back. Life moves on, whether we're ready or not, but surviving isn't just about getting through the pain. It's about facing it, understanding it, and daring to live again. I won't lie, some nights the memories still hit like a freight train. That smirk, the hidden messages, the ring that wasn't mine. But even in the darkest moments, I've realized something important. The power to reclaim your life lies in your hands. Even after betrayal, heartbreak, and devastation, there's still hope. There's still light. If this story gripped you, shook you, or made you question everything you thought you knew, don't just scroll past. Subscribe to follow for more gripping, real-life Reddit-style stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Follow to stay connected and never miss a story that makes you feel deeply. And comment below. Share your experiences, your thoughts, your own moments of betrayal or awakening, because these stories aren't just mine, they're ours. They remind us that pain can teach, betrayal can reveal, and surviving means discovering the strength we never knew we had. Don't just watch. Be part of the conversation. Join the journey. Share your voice.